Welcome to the One Hand at a Time podcast. I'm your host, Chris Welton. And today I have a guest who has made a massive impact on my career over the last 20 plus years. And I'm so excited to share some of the stories, just some of the strategies he's brought to the mortgage industry, and just what a great guy he is as far as leveling people up around him on a consistent basis. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. It's really nice to be with you.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited. We had to move the date around because I had to move across the country and other stuff. But I'm so glad we were able to get this back on the calendar. And my first question is, how are you doing? How you feeling? Everything good?
So, yeah, Chris, thank goodness I feel pretty good. And my journey with the cancer that I have has been a battle. It's a double hit B cell lymphoma, which is tough to begin with. But then there's a mutation within the cancer of the TP53 gene. And that makes it very, very tricky and very difficult. So went through rigorous chemo and that didn't work. Then had to do radiation and something called CAR T, where they take your T cells and they put them back in. And that temporarily made things a little bit better, but it was still there. And unless you eradicate it, you're in trouble. So we've gone to this other system with something called glofitamab and an oral drug that's on top of that. So the glofitamab is every 3 weeks infusion, and the lenalidomide you take orally, and that seems to be helping. And then I through some, just some wonderful good fortune, I connected with Patrick Soon-Shiong out in LA, and he got me approved for this other drug that I take by injection. I have to fly out to LA to get it every 3 weeks. But the last scan I got was really good. The treatments, they're all immunotherapy. They're not chemo, but even though there's some side effects, you get some fatigue and this and that. But I do feel pretty good. And the last scan I got was really favorable. So we're going to stick with these treatments, but it's good. I'm happy. It's good. And what I've been told is this may be more of a marathon than a sprint, but that's okay. Just keep going.
Well, you're a tough guy. I mean, that's I think that's, obviously the medical and the science behind it's amazing, but you're a tough dude. I mean, if you go back and look at the history and just the stuff you've built out and overcome through your life and your career, that just prepares you for the tougher things in life. And I think that if you hadn't gone through everything you went through this point, and you may have had a different result or may not have the drive and, the tenacity to fight the way you do. So kudos to you on that. But look, I want to tell everybody that doesn't know, but in 2005, I started in the mortgage industry. So 20 years ago. And the first thing I did was I subscribed to this thing called Mortgage Market Guide. And because my friend told me, hey, you need to be an expert. You need to learn how to do things differently. So I dove all in and I became just a student of the industry, not selling interest rate or doing anything else. And I got to tell you, when I look back on that, Barry, it made me so different than everybody else in the market, right? I instantly gained credibility when I'd only originated 1 or 2 loans. I gained credibility because I knew what I was talking about other than just, hey, this is an FHA product, or here's your DTI's too high. You gave me the tools to do something great, not just for me, but the families I impacted. And then again, now 20 years later, how I've been able to control my career and my destiny because of the things I learned from you. So first, thank you for all that. But I always wondered what your driving force was to get into that space of the mortgage industry. Why was it an education thing? Why did you want to help other people grow in that manner?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, but first, with regards to fighting and overcoming adversity, thank you for the kind words. But we all have it within us. So every single one of us has the ability to do that. You just got to dig down deep, and you don't realize how strong you are, how tough you are, until you're faced with the challenges, and then to just push yourself to rise up. So everybody's going through some sort of a challenge, whether it affects you or somebody you love. So all of us have our share of difficulties, and each time that we're presented with that, it's absolutely amazing that if you dig down, if you believe in yourself, and if you have the faith that you can rise up and meet these challenges. So that's the first thing. And then that ties well into what you were talking about on the education side. So yes, created back in the day, CMPS to take it a step further, and now CMA, which is a whole different level, a much higher level of ways to educate yourself on the market. And the reason for that, Chris, is because In any sales situation, and clearly we're all in sales here, the fastest way to increase your income and the best way to increase your income is to be more efficient. And you need to close more of the opportunities that you already have. And just imagine this, and you know, what would your environment, what would your income, what would things be like if you were to take more of the conversations you had with referral partners and convert them into more times when they were referring you business? What if the conversations that you had with clients resulted in more transactions, more applications, more closings? And how can you do that more effectively and more efficiently is that you have to use within that time frame that you have with that client on the initial discussion, a much more efficient and effective way to have them have you gain their trust, have them have faith in you, believe in you, want to do business with you, and feel as if, what am I going to miss if I don't work with you? So as you said, while everybody else might be saying this is an FHA program or quoting a rate or doing what anyone can do, and especially today with the breakneck speed that AI is moving at, those discussions do not differentiate yourself one bit. The mortgage professional that's asked the question that's always asked from clients in one way or another is that, is this a good time to buy? I'm hearing these things about the housing market. Am I making the right decision? I mean, that's something that we hear all the time. Or, hey, which way are rates going to go? The mortgage professional who answers that question in a way, or any sales, quite frankly, that doesn't differentiate themselves, you just missed a great opportunity. These questions are coming, and to not be prepared to knock it out of the park is truly a missed opportunity. I mean, imagine when you were taking an exam, if you had the benefit of knowing what the questions were before the exam, you should score well because you should prepare yourself correctly. And yet mortgage professionals, they know, and real estate agents, they know this question's coming. And how do they answer it? Well, market seems pretty good right now. And, I think that's pretty good. And boy, rates, if I knew that was where they were going to be heading, I'd be having a pina colada on the beach somewhere. This is not a good way to answer the question. And by gaining the type of knowledge to prepare yourself, you can rise above the AI bots. You could rise above your competition, and you could really impress the customer to the extent of where they're saying, wow, what am I going to miss if I don't do business with you? And I'm not saying you get 100% of the transactions, but the bottom line here is we want to increase our effectiveness. And by closing more of those opportunities, by gaining more referrals, by that real estate partner or whomever the referral source is to say, wow, you know what? You can really help me if I'm trying to get my client to see the opportunity in real estate or be able to provide better advice for them. I'm going to align myself more with you, and I want my clients to go to you because you're going to help them in a way see the opportunity that helps the real estate agent or the referral source achieve their goals. And if you were to increase your effectiveness in closing ratio on either more referrals or more transactions, your income begins to explode. And that's the difference. There are producers today that are doing exceedingly well. Yet, I don't know if you know this, but as we're recording this, the median income of a mortgage professional right now, mid-2025, is around $50,000 a year. And in the world that we're in, after taxes and after certain compensatory expenses that you have, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room there. And that's half the originators. Half are earning less than that. There's about 154,000 originators right now in the business. So 77,000 are making less than $50,000 a year. So, but on the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of originators that are really flourishing and succeeding. And I would venture to say, Chris, that it is the efficacy of their dialogue with the customers. It's not that they're outspending them. It's that they're being more effective. And that's the difference. And final part of what you asked me, what was the driving force? I think that's, look, life's about giving. It's not about taking. And people who figure that out fast are much happier. It's a lot of things that we get. The wonderful feeling we get from it is ephemeral. You have a big month, it feels great, but then the next first of the month, you're at zero. You get a new car, the new car is great. Maybe that lasts for a while and it's exciting, but that wears off. The thing that doesn't wear off is making a difference in other people's lives. The thing that doesn't wear off, that really stays with you, that if we're all trying to chase that elusive word happiness, if we're really trying to feel fulfilled, we need goals, right? You need financial goals. Certainly you need that, right? And you need achievement goals, certainly. But, the third leg of the stool that people miss is the fulfillment one. And fulfillment doesn't come from fulfilling yourself. It comes from fulfilling others and helping others and having them be able to grow, to teach them. So that's where that desire comes from. So yeah, in a way, there's some selfishness to it because that makes me happy. But doing good for others and good in the world is what lasts. And that's what, people, as I said, who figure that out, the faster people figure that out, the happier they become.
Yeah, I mean, you've created an amazing legacy in the industry, obviously. I mean, and I know countless stories like mine. So it's not just, Chris is the one. No, I know countless stories. But what really is impactful for me is everything that I've learned from you over time. I've been able to transfer that onto other people in the industry, right? Like my main business is coaching originators now. I coach several high-end originators. And what the cool thing is right now, Barry, is my top producers I coach are all under the age of 30. These are all guys between the ages of 25 and 28 that are doing 100 million plus a year in origination. And they want to get to 200 million. I haven't seen drive like that in that age bracket since I was that guy, right? Like it's crazy. But the difference is that they're listening to people to make sure they have the right information to be able to be different than everybody else. Coming from an educational space, I did very well starting out early in the industry with financial advisors. And that's where I built my business, was with a lot of Northwestern Mutual people. And because I was so educated, I could come in and speak their language because Barry Habib taught me how to do that. Right. So like I was able to do those things. And that's what I've been able to transfer on to these young guys I coach and mentor. And then I see other people, our company, we're struggling. We're not getting any business. We're not doing this. I'm like, what's your foundation? What are you building? What are you trying to create? What are you working from? If you're still chasing the things you were chasing last year, you're not going to win. There's different things that are going on in the market. And the education piece to me is the biggest one.
First of all, that says a lot about you I just told you what the statistics were, and for you to have people that you're teaching and coaching to be able to perform at that high level, especially the fact that they're young and maybe they don't have to unlearn some bad habits. Yep. Maybe they're more open to, hey, let's do it this way. A lot of people say, okay, well, to speak from a level of trying to understand the financial aspect of it or the financial markets, they might say, well, maybe I can't do that. Well, you can. People I didn't come out of the womb and get tapped on the rear end and say, hey, look, I wonder what the Fed's going to do today. This is all learned behaviors. This is all things that we're able to master over time. And what I guess some of these young people are able to adapt to more rapidly is the fact that there's not a I can't attitude. It's like, okay, this is what Chris is telling me to do. This is what I'm going to do because I know it works. So they're more open to it. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
But it also speaks to what we just discussed, is that they're doing this because they're more effective in their dialogue. Mm-hmm. It's the efficacy. It's closing more of those opportunities. That's clearly the fastest way to increase income. And it's amazing to me that that's just not generally accepted. It's people say, okay, what do I do in marketing? What do I do in social media? I'm saying do all those things. Yeah, yes, but start from within. You should really be asking the question, how can I be more effective? What do I need to do to be more effective? Because you can't control the rate. The rate is what the rate is. You can't control the rate the company provides for you. You can't control any of those things. People choose to bitch about those things and complain about them.
Yes, they do.
But what they really should be doing is saying to themselves and asking this important question: how can I be more effective? What can I do in that first 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Because that's all you get for that first conversation, right? What can I do in that first 5 or 10 minutes? And how can I polish that to the level where I am so effective that more often than not, a lot more often than not, the individual wants to continue the dialogue with me, wants to continue working with me, wants to shop me less, wants to have more faith in me than others. How do I gain their trust? That's the magic, Chris. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the magic of it.
Yep. No, I agree. And there's a lost art there to the first 5 to 10 minutes, but there's also a lost art. I believe the people that are struggling the most right now have lost the art of asking for more business in the right way to get the referrals during that, earning the right to get referrals during the transaction. Right. And that's one of the things we work on a lot. And I talk on a lot with I got a group call this afternoon. I've got 60 LOs that are going to be on a group call with me this afternoon. And we're going to talk about using some scripting from Phil Jones, exactly what to say on how to ask for referrals the right way. That's the whole mindset behind it. But earning the right to ask for the referral, two different things, right? Some people think that just because I'm talking to you, I should be able to get a referral. Well, if we do what we know we need to do in the beginning by coming and stepping out and being different, then we're going to earn the right to ask for a referral down the line. And the referral businesses are the ones that survive, right? Like, I mean, like I wouldn't have known about your products if someone else in the industry didn't say, hey, you need to do this, right? Because when I got in, social media was in 2005, there was no, like, it wasn't like you were doing sponsored ads on my desktop, right? But it was all based off that. How do you feel about that? Do you think that that's a lost art, the asking for the business or asking for referrals from current clients?
Confidence is such an important part of life, period. Yeah, I think that we'd all agree that confidence is an attractive quality. It attracts us. I'm not saying cockiness, but whatever it is, in choosing a mate, your confidence level is important. In choosing, a physician, and you don't want your physician to be, well, I'm not so sure about it. The confidence level is very magnetic. It attracts you, and I think that confidence is not something you could bullshit. You gain confidence by really knowing your stuff. And if you are working at it, if you understand the market, if you understand your craft, if you are really well versed in that, and you're not parroting, meaning you try to memorize it and repeat it, that's very, very different from really understanding it and then internalizing it and then explaining it because you understand it and you can explain it. Two very different things. If you have the knowledge, and look, it's not you're going to blink and you're going to get it, but over time, if you work at it and you stay with it, the rewards are incredible. And having confidence then gives you the ability to politely and correctly ask for the business in a way that you feel that you should ask for the business. Because if you really know that you're the best person for the job, it's in your client's best interest to refer people to you. It's in their best interest, because if someone out there is going to do the job, why shouldn't it be someone who is one of the best, that understands it in a way that is superior to the vast majority of others out there? I mean, wouldn't we want that? Clearly, I would want that as a customer. Do I want to go to someone who's subpar or mediocre, or do I want to go to one of the best people that are out there that are going to help me with the biggest financial transaction in my life? So when I would ask for business, I was asking for business because I was extremely confident that I was going to do a better job. Now, maybe my rate wasn't better, but I made up for it in so many different ways, starting off with market knowledge, because it's not the rate you're quoted. The rate you're quoted isn't the rate you necessarily close with. The rate you're locked with may be important, but the only rate that matters is the rate you close with. So even if somebody is at a lower rate than I was initially, my ability to show my market knowledge and show past experiences was able to show that customer that I can understand the market to the level where we'll lock at potentially a more advantageous time, so that while you might be quoted or locked elsewhere that might seem at a better deal, I think when we get to the finish line, I can close you at a better deal. And even if I don't, well, most people's job ends the day of closing. That's where my job begins.
Yeah,
because
same
from the
here.
day of closing on, I'm going to fight for the lowest rate for you, and I'm going to be watching the market and staying in touch with you. And I would establish a strike rate with them, so that sometime in the future, we can establish an amount of money that they want to save where it makes sense for them. $200 a month, $250 a month. Okay, that's $3,000 a year. That's $15,000 over 5 years. So I want to make sure we get that free $15,000 over 5 years for you. So I will be watching the market for you. When it hits this level, I want your commitment right now, since these opportunities could be fleeting. But I can go ahead, lock you in, call you, and get the ball rolling, because what I don't want is I don't want you to be thinking about it and then looking around and discussing if it makes sense and analyzing it then. And then the opportunity, as we have seen so many times, right? I mean, how many times, Chris, have we seen that, we get a low rate for a day, for 3 days, maybe for a week.
2 hours.
2 hours. So we've
Yeah.
seen that. So that's not the time to be,
Mm-mm.
screwing around. That's the time to take action and seize the opportunity. So that means that you have to do the work in advance. How many mortgage professionals, instead of bitching about the slow market, is use this time effectively and go back to every client in the last 3 years that likely has a higher rate and setting up a strike rate with them
Yeah.
and saying, hey, when it hits this, I'm going to refinance you. How many are using the script that one of the reasons you want to work with me is because I want to establish a strike rate with you, so that after the day of closing, there's a high likelihood that we'll be in an environment where rates are lower. I will seize that opportunity for you. And that's why you want to work with me. And these are the things that I think differentiate you. These are the types of things that, along with market knowledge, gain that trust, gain that respect, make you more effective.
Agreed. And I think that is one of the things we sell up front too, is I'm going to have your mortgage under management, like your financial advisor does. And that was my whole thing, is that the mortgages under management, that was my thing. I would manage it like a financial advisor does. We would do an annual review and we'd stay on top of it. I had the old school floppy disk mortgage coach, right? Like the original mortgage coach. And my assistant would go through there banging out stuff to stay on top of where we needed to be competitive with that. And it's a lost art. There's so much gold in these databases these people have, that LOs have, that they're not staying consistent with it. There's tons of business in that database, whether there's business in the market or not. Those people are in there doing something. Something's happening. High rate credit cards. Maybe they want to buy investment property. The divorce rate's up. There's all these different things that there's opportunity in there, but you have to stay in front of them and have the communication consistent. But I believe that comes at part in the beginning too, is setting that up. Let them understand what this looks like.
There's so many things. And obviously, we've got incredible tools, not only to compare loans highly effectively, but debt consolidation is so important right now for people. And, look, 1 out of every 6 transactions is an investment property. And how many mortgage professionals are going back to their clients and just giving them the advice to say, hey, did you know that you can do a structured cost on your investment property, where you could do a cost segregation structure, and what that will do is that will make an enormous difference in the tax benefit that you receive. And so what is a segregated cost structure is what most people will say. Okay, well, if you have an investment property, I've got an investment property, you get depreciation. On a residential property, you have to take that over 27 and a half years. So that's less than 4% of the purchase price that you're able to take as depreciation, which is beneficial from your tax perspective, right? But if you do a segregated cost structure, by segregating the cost, and you have to pay for that, you get an evaluation, and there's ways to do that. You can likely take about 40% of the purchase price and take that 40% and deduct it in year 1. And then on the other 60%, you use the 27 and a half years. On a $500,000 home, assuming that you're in a combined tax bracket for the customer of 40% between state and federal, that's $77,000 difference in cash, in your hand. $77,000. How many of your competitors out there are structuring transactions where there's a $77,000 immediate benefit to the customer in cash? So these are the types of things that make the customer say, well, what else am I going to miss if I don't do business with you? So it is that education. It is that way to find business where people are saying, well, there's no business out there. Well, there is, if you just were to do the homework, call your past customers, work with your database.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of my clients, he closes around 15 to 20 deals a month, and 90% of his business is non-QM, right? 26 years old. and he's doing all this non-QM business. He's just really dominating the market because he comes with that type of messaging for his clients. And he's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So it's not like he's in some big mecca, you know. I mean, he's in the Midwest where half the year it's frozen, right? So like he found his niche there, and he separates himself from everybody else by doing the same thing you just talked about, like understanding cost segregation, understanding the differences and what opportunities are out there. And I said, I don't think enough people are taking the non-QM packaging stuff, the DSCRs and the other things that are available, and going and talking to financial advisors about that. I don't think that that's being done at a high level, but there's an opportunity for it in the market for that. And obviously we both had a front row seat through the mortgage meltdown in the early 2000s. And these are not the same products. We know that, right? I mean, these aren't the same products and what that looked like before. But I wanted to get on to just a couple more things before we jump off here. We had the markers for so long, we could not really predict what was going to happen. But if we watch certain things, we could kind of have an idea of like the definition of a recession, right? You taught me that years ago. And then now the people have changed the rules on what that means. And understanding what we thought the market would do, it was more predictable, but it seems so less predictable now. Is that because it moves so much faster, Barry? Or like what, like, I don't understand why it's so harder to dial it in, I guess.
Well, clearly the time compression is a real thing. That's one. But even when it comes to a recession, the National Bureau of Economic Research, the NBER, they're like the referee or the umpire, and some of the thought processes are subjective. The other thing that happens is while time is compressed and things are moving rapidly on an instantaneous basis, the disconnect is that the data that the decision makers are looking at has an enormous lag.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like sports before instant replay. You have the world has this technology, the world has this ability, but yet it was, as far as the sports world, using antiquated methodologies to make very critical decisions. Well, here we are, much more important than just the sports world is the decisions on policy, economic policy, things that affect everybody. I mean, these inflation decisions, they cost our government, they cost our country, they cost taxpayers so much money because it is based upon what the government pays in interest on its debt. It is based upon what is paid out in increases in things like pay and Social Security. So there are real impacts for not taking the instant replay and applying it to what happens now. We have the resources, we have the ability to see in real time what is happening. And yet the Fed, who is very culpable in making mistakes, that's why we have boom bust cycles, uses antiquated methodologies because 40 years ago we didn't have these things, but let's get with modern times. You go back to 2021 and 2022. Look, the reason, Chris, that people are paying so much more at the grocery store and people are complaining about the effects of inflation, the reason why mortgage rates are so high and the housing market is slow to a great degree is because, first of all, you had, and I'm not saying this to be political, it's just factual, you had a lot of profligate spending. They had that $1.9 trillion package that didn't help. You had PPP, you had ESCR. Now, were there some good that potentially came out of those under the Biden administration? I'm sure there were some good that came out of it. But the explosive cost structure and putting that much money into the system, it's inflationary. And then the Fed, instead of being the watchdog, now they talk tough, but instead of guarding us and instead of protecting us, the Fed kept not only rates at zero, literally, but they kept quantitative easing going far too long under the cover of saying, well, inflation's still well behaved. All these Fed members that you hear today talk about how they're great inflation hawks. These people, go back and play the tape. It's beautiful because you could see them all. They're all begging, we need more inflation. We need more. Well, you got what you wanted, right? And what they should have been doing was raising rates then to slow inflation, stopping QE to slow inflation, and being the real guardians that they should have been. But instead, they were blind to what was happening in real time, relied on lagging old data, and kept these mechanisms going for too long. We're very far behind the curve. And the reason I bring that up, Chris, is because they're doing the exact same thing now, but in reverse. The Fed should be cutting. The Fed is about 110 basis points restrictive in their policy now. That means they are literally having their foot on the neck of the economy, saying, I'm intentionally trying to slow you down, instead of saying, okay, where's the inflation coming from? It's coming from areas that the Fed can't really influence by keeping rates high. It is coming in areas like healthcare costs. So, I mean, look, if you're going to get sick, you're going to pay that, right? I mean, so it's not like you're going to say, well, the Fed's raised rates, so I'm not going to pay my medical bills.
Exactly.
So the other is in things like, how about this one? Car leases. Car leases is an inflationary contributor.
Yeah.
Why are car leases more expensive? Well, because the Fed's pushed rates higher.
Because rates are higher.
Think about the lunacy of that, okay?
Yeah.
And then the other, and the biggest one, is in shelter costs, which the way
housing,
that our government looks at shelter is not price of a home. It is not interest rates on a mortgage. It's not your mortgage payment. It is simply taking it and transferring it as a service. And that's actually a smart idea, making the use of something called owner's equivalent rent. If I own a home, what could I rent it for? Which is just guesswork, but also actual rents. And in the real world, these have been coming down rather significantly, yet the numbers that the government looks at, there's two big problems. One is that it is too big of a job to look at rents across the country. So they divide the country into 6, what they call panels, and they only visit one a month. So therefore, you have areas of the country that aren't looked at for 6 months at a time, and that could cause rents to have either gone up or declined. So there's a lag there. But how about the other lag? What do you pay rent? I pay $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month. Okay. But the question that's not asked is that, when did you sign your lease? Because while you may be paying it today and they're taking it as a today number, or 6 months later based on the panel that they're looking at, it could be reflective of a lease you signed 8 months in the past. So there's like a year lag in what amounts to 44+% of core CPI and almost 20% of core PCE, which is the inflation gauges that are commonly looked at. This is a problem at points of inflection like we have now. It was the reason why they kept rates too low, because those were skyrocketing, but the data lagged so much the Fed was blind to it. And now that these things are coming down, the Fed's holding rates too high because they're looking at the old data instead of what's right in front of their nose. It's time to put instant replay technology into making very important economic decisions.
Yeah, we have so much. It's just right there in front of us. Like, is it ego? Is it ego? Is it just old school thinking? Like,
well, remember that the Fed chair is a lawyer and not a trained economist, and they're all a bunch of neo-Keynesians. So the Keynesians are an odd bunch. And the Keynesian methodology has clearly failed, and it's very inflationary. They think that if there is economic slowdown, you spend into it, you spend into it, you spend into it. But there's an inflationary ramification of that. And in addition to that, what's a big problem is that it is this terrible fear of being ostracized if you disagree at the Fed. Even in the media, if you ask a question that the Fed is uncomfortable with, they will then cancel you and eliminate you. Think about this. This is not a communist country. Okay, you should be able to ask questions, but yet you are then prohibited from even coming back into the meeting. When I say the meeting, the press conference, I should say, not the Fed meeting. But Fed members get ostracized. I mean, contrast this with what just happened in the UK. They had their vote on their central bank meeting, and it was 5-4, 5 of them yay, 4 of them nay. That's open discussion. That's healthy. That's a debate. The best companies that are run, the boardroom isn't, yes men and women. It is people that maybe say, hey, let's question this. How do we do this better? What about this? What about that? We don't have that at our Fed. And that's why I believe we have these boom and bust cycles, is because they look at old data, they push it too far one way, and then it's a matter of, oh shit, now we got to go the other way. And so they become, just like they are now, too restrictive. So you go into a bust, and then they get too accommodative, and you get into a boom. So there's no gauge. It's like, Alan Greenspan was cognizant of this, and he was a good Fed chair, second longest Fed chair for over 18 years we had, second behind William McChesney Martin. And he said that we have to be cognizant of this because look at the analogy he gave. It's like when you go into the shower, it's strange, right? Imagine Alan Greenspan saying this, but he did,
Yeah.
where if you go into the shower and you want the water to be hot, now we all know you first turn on the water, it tends to be cold, right? But if you put it on all the way hot, well, then obviously it'll be okay for a little bit, but then you're going to burn yourself. And then if you say, well, it's too hot, and you go all the way cold, you'll never get there. And that's the way the Fed's behaving right now. It's that shower analogy that Alan Greenspan warned about is exactly what they're doing right now. Instead of saying, hey, let's moderate it to something here and be patient that it'll eventually get there. No, it's all the way one way or all the way another.
I literally used that analogy yesterday on a group call with some LOs. That's so funny you said that because I got it from you years ago, but like when Greenspan said it, but so I used that. But so just two more questions real quick. One is mortgage-backed securities. Do you feel that selling mortgage-backed securities to foreign government could be a risk of national security?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. Not at all. We sell. They buy treasuries.
I know. But I just always felt like it was kind of weird that.
No, but why would it be? I couldn't see a reason why it would be. I think that this is a topic that's come up now with Korea, and trying to get Korea to purchase some of our treasuries is what it was. It wasn't mortgage-backed securities, but it was treasuries. But why not mortgage-backed securities? I mean, it happens anyway. These are sold in the public marketplace. Do we not think foreigners are purchasing these? They sure are. Anybody could purchase. If you look in what's in your IRAs and 401ks and mutual funds, they're holding mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. So, I don't see that. I think that the more buying that we can get, the greater the benefit that there is. I think that everyone's interested. Also, when you start to be looking at these types of purchases as a foreigner. Not from our perspective, but as a foreigner's perspective, you do have the complication of currency changes as well. You can make a good return, but if your currency falters, you could actually lose a lot of money, even though you're getting a good return. So these are things that make it more complex for foreigners to make purchases of our securities.
Okay. All right. So last one has nothing to do with the mortgage business. This has to do with cars. I know you're a car guy. You like cars,
to say the least.
So what's your favorite car you've ever owned?
Wow, I've had so many cars that I've really, really, really loved, and I've had some recent ones that are really cool, like an SF90 that I just had, the 2025 SF90, and then sold it because the car is the fastest car I've ever had. It's 1,000 horsepower, and you really feel the G-force. I've never had a car that you really feel that, and it was great. But it's. I had an opportunity to sell it for a lot more than I paid for it, so I said, okay, it's just a car. I'm going to do it. And the same thing with the Pure Sangue, which I just did that as well, which was a phenomenal vehicle, although the technology in the Pure Sangue is not where it should be, and it was more frustrating than anything else, but it is an amazing vehicle. I think, believe it or not, it is probably something that is more practical. So I'm going to sound a little more boring here, but a car that accomplishes the goal of being comfortable, fast, beautiful, gives you a little bit of that, a little bit of that pizzazz. Because, listen, we want a little bit of that, because if you pull up in a nice vehicle to a client's home, or, it's a nice thing to have. Don't underestimate the value in that. It is important, okay? Even if it's not important to you, it is important to gently make that impression that you are successful to others.
Yes. Agreed.
So, I really so I have a Urus Performante, which I really, really like, and I think that's a great vehicle. But I also have I've got a couple of Roma Spiders on order. And I think that is just a very, very, very nice car. And the Portofino is also a really, really nice car. And
Yeah.
Bentleys too. You know, the Bentley GT is really nice car, and it checks off all the boxes. It's fast, it's comfortable, it looks
In a
great.
2 or 3 year old Bentley GT is a deal. It's a deal. Like
It
it's,
is, and it's a great car. It's
yeah,
a phenomenal car, Bentley GT, and all mine are convertibles.
yeah,
I'm a convertible kind of guy, you know. So I like having a convertible, and they do hold their value more. And that's another consideration.
yeah.
Is you probably heard me mention a lot our Ferraris, and the
Mhm.
reason why I really like Ferraris is from being smart financially. You oftentimes can make money. You could drive the
Oh
car
yeah,
for 6 months or a year and make a lot of money. I had an
yeah,
812 that I sold and made a lot of money on, you know, and the Pure Sangue as well, and the
yeah.
SF90. So you can make lots of money on some of them, but if you don't make money, they will tend to hold their value more than anything else that's out there in the practical world. I mean, Bugattis can tend to appreciate, but that's out of
Yeah.
my neighborhood.
That's a
Um,
different. That's a
yeah, it's a
different
different
animal.
animal.
Yeah,
So, you know, Bentleys are great. And the reason why there's a deal, and that's why I brought it up, is because Bentleys, they do tend to not hold on to their value a lot more.
yeah. I like that 2 or 3 year old Bentley that's got 6,000 miles on it that's been sitting in someone's garage. That's my next car. That's my next move.
It's
Is a Bentley.
fantastic. I have
Yeah.
one. It's amazing. I love it. It's comfortable. It's great. It's really,
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But you're right. I have some friends that have Ferraris and they tend to just sell them and make more money on them.
Yeah, either
Yeah,
that or they'll hold their value if you hold on
yeah,
to it. You
yeah.
know,
Like
I mean,
Chris
you
Vincent.
could lose
You know
money.
Chris Vincent. Chris Vincent had a beautiful Ferrari. He had a beautiful green, like it was an F8? Maybe is that what they call that
Oh yeah,
car?
the F8
Yeah,
F8s are
yeah,
nice cars. Yeah, that was for the Genesis from the 488.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
Beautiful car.
you had the 458, 488 F8, and then
Yeah,
you went into the SF90 after that. You know, well, you have a 296 SF90 kind of
yeah.
iteration.
Yeah, but beautiful cars. Well, man, thanks again, Barry, and I can't wait to see you again. I'm sure we'll cross paths sometime later this year if you're out speaking. I've got some good speaking events coming. I've been blessed to get some opportunities to speak on some stages, and just again, man, you're one of those guys I can look back and I can say I learned so much from Barry, and Dave Savage is another one that just played key roles in the success. You know, giving me the tools I needed to go do the work.
Well, thanks, brother. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the One Hand at a Time podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and were able to take away something that will help you elevate your career, business, or just your personal life in general. If by any chance you would like to take your journey even further than just this podcast, then please consider going over to chriswelton.live and potentially scheduling a time to work with Chris to develop the steps to help you get to the next level. If you also are interested in learning even more about Chris Welton, then please visit his Instagram or YouTube channel, One Hand at a Time. There are weekly uploads giving you a true glimpse at his life and all of the motivation and knowledge that he has to offer. Again, thank you for listening, and we hope to have you back on the next episode.